Who is at the helm of your life? When storms break, when challenges knock on your door, are you the captain holding the ship steady on its course, or a novice adrift, tossed about by the waves of fear and doubt? You know there's a voice somewhere inside you, holding you back from realizing your potential, trying to keep you anchored in the safe waters of your comfort zone. That voice whispering doubt, feeding fear, justifying inaction. That is the weak self at the heart of our topic today. Welcome to the Stoic King with Glasses channel. Here, guided by the light of Stoicism and ancient wisdom that has stood the test of time, we strive to navigate the complexities of life, discover our inner strength, and live more meaningful lives. Today, we embark on perhaps one of our most personal and transformative journeys. To kill that weak version of yourself. This phrase might sound harsh, but we are not speaking of literal violence. What we are discussing is a conscious process of transformation, shedding the limiting belief patterns, fears, and habits that hold us back, and replacing them with a stronger, more virtuous self equipped with courage, discipline, and wisdom. One of the greatest masters to guide us in this battle is Marcus Aurelius, both an emperor and a philosopher. His work, Meditations, is a unique manifesto on maintaining sanity and inner peace amidst adversity, and on overcoming weaknesses. In this video, drawing upon the wisdom distilled from Marcus Aurelius's Stoic philosophy, we will explore which actions and beliefs are worth standing firm on without regret. We will understand the roots of our weak self, recognize the thoughts and behaviors that nurture it, and learn how to neutralize it using Stoic principles, how to become more resilient, more determined, and ultimately more free. If you are ready, let us begin the journey to fortify your inner citadel and leave that weak version of yourself behind. 1. The shadow within, recognizing the weak self. Even while carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders, Marcus Aurelius knew that the real battle was not against the barbarians outside, but against the enemies within himself. So, who is this weak self inside us? From a Stoic perspective, it is not a physical weakness or a lack of talent. No, it is something much deeper, a condition that gnaws at the potential of our soul. It is the sum of fears, desires, laziness, and dependency on external validation that suppresses the voice of our reason and virtue. The weak self is the one that whispers, "Just 5 more minutes," when the morning alarm rings. It's the one that makes excuses to avoid a difficult conversation, that immediately becomes defensive when criticized, that sacrifices long-term goals for the sake of instant gratification. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, it is everything that prevents us from living according to our nature, our rational and social nature. He often warns himself in Meditations, "Wake up, come to yourself." And when you have woken out of sleep and realized that they were only dreams that troubled you, now, in your waking hours, look at these real things as you looked at those dreams. This weak self is a kind of slumber that keeps us from facing the realities of life. One of the most prominent faces of this inner shadow is fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of discomfort, fear of the unknown. These fears are often like colossal shadows, appearing much larger and more terrifying than the actual danger. Our weak self believes in these shadows, mistakes them for reality, and prevents us from taking action. Just like the prisoners in Plato's allegory of the cave, the weak self mistakes shadows for reality, fleeing from the light of our potential. Another faces procrastination, the tendency to put off today's work until tomorrow, or even to an indefinite future. The weak self loves immediate comfort and ease. It prefers to spend time on easy and pleasant distractions rather than on challenging but necessary tasks. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of his duty every morning, to work as a human being. Procrastination is a betrayal of this fundamental. Duty, a waste of time, our most precious and irretrievable resource. The weak self takes refuge in the comforting lie of later, and perhaps its most insidious face is the dependence on external validation. The weak self measures its own worth by the reflection in others' eyes. It thrives on applause and crumbles under criticism. It mistakes external things beyond our control, wealth, fame, status, for the keys to happiness. Yet, for the Stoics, true value lies within our virtuous character. Like a ship that has lost its compass, the weak self constantly changes direction according to the winds of others' opinions, unable to see its own inner North Star. Reason and virtue. So, these elements: fear, procrastination, dependence on external validation, and uncontrolled emotions like anger, jealousy, excessive grief, are the fundamental building blocks of our weak self. To kill, it means to become aware of these tendencies, to question the thought patterns that feed them, and through conscious effort, to return to the guidance of our reason. This is not a one-time event, but a struggle fought every day, every moment. When we stop feeding the weak self, when we starve it, it begins to lose its power. This is not an act of violence against ourselves, but quite the opposite, an act of liberation to reach our highest potential. 2. The compass of control: what you can change, what you must accept. The antidote to the fear, procrastination, and dependency on external validation that nourishes our weak self lies perhaps in the most fundamental and powerful tool of Stoic philosophy: the dichotomy of control. This principle, sharply articulated by Epictetus and applied by Marcus Aurelius in every moment of his life, is this: some things are within our control, and some are not. The first and most critical step in killing the weak self is to make this distinction clearly. So, what is outside our control? Actually, a vast portion of our lives. What other people think, say, or do is not within our control. The state of the economy, the weather, natural disasters, the ups and downs of our health, even if we do our best, our reputation, our wealth, even the aging of our own bodies. These are external events. They are part of the flow of fate, or nature. The weak self constantly focuses its energy on these uncontrollable areas. It tries to win the approval of others, grieves over past events it cannot change, worries about future uncertainties. This is like trying to punch the wind or stop the ocean tides. It is a futile effort that only breeds frustration, anger, and anxiety. As Marcus Aurelius said, you are disturbed not by things, but by the judgment you make about them. And you can wipe this judgment out now. The weak self exhausts its strength by dwelling on these external events. Then, what is within our control? This is where the true source of our power lies. Our own thoughts, judgments, beliefs, intentions, desires, aversions, and most importantly, our actions and reactions. In short, our inner world and its outward expressions. Choosing to remain calm instead of reacting with anger when insulted is within our control. Choosing to take the first step instead of procrastinating when faced with a difficult task is within our control. Choosing to learn from failure and try again instead of giving up is within our control. Our opinions about others, the way we interpret events, the goals we set for ourselves, and the effort we put into achieving those goals. All of these depend on our will. We are the absolute rulers of our inner citadel. Understanding and internalizing this distinction is the most powerful weapon against the weak self. Because when we shift our focus from uncontrollable external events to controllable internal responses, we cut off the weak self's sources of nourishment. Fear diminishes because we know that what matters is not the outcome, but how virtuously we approach that outcome. Procrastination weakens because our focus is not on guaranteeing a perfect result, but on taking the right step we can take right now. The need for external approval evaporates because we base our worth not on the fluctuating opinions of others, but on our own principled actions. Just as a sculptor accepts the flaws in the marble block before them uncontrollable and focuses all their skill controllable on creating a masterpiece from that marble, we too focus on giving the best, most virtuous response controllable with the material life presents us uncontrollable. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this principle to keep his mind clear amidst the turbulent days of the empire, during wars, plagues, and betrayals. Meditations is a testament to his internal struggle, his effort to continually turn his focus to the area he could control his own thoughts and actions. Instead of listening to the whispers of the weak self, he chose to listen to the voice of his reason and duty. This is the essence of killing the weak self, turning our focus to the right place, namely the domain of our own will. 3. Dancing in Fate's Embrace, Amor Fati and the End of Resistance. We've understood the dichotomy of control. We must turn our focus to the domain of our will. But what about that vast area beyond our control? The unexpected events, losses, and hardships that life brings our way. How does our weak self react to these? It rebels, complains, asks, "Why me?" Laments what could have been. This resistance, this state of battling reality, is the weak self's favorite playground. Because in this war, we always lose, and this loss feeds its need for pain and excuses. Herein lies the revolutionary antidote offered by Stoicism. Amor Fati, meaning love of fate. Amor Fati does not mean simply passively accepting fate, gritting your teeth and enduring it. It is a much deeper, much more transformative invitation to embrace everything that happens to you, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, as if you had chosen it yourself. Even to love it. It means saying yes to the entire flow of life, to all its ups and downs. Although popularized by Nietzsche, its roots lie deep within Stoic thought. Marcus Aurelius expressed this idea repeatedly in different ways. Accept the thread that destiny spins for you in the fabric of the universe, or, more powerfully, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When faced with an obstacle, the weak self sees it as a wall. It stops, punches it, complains, and retreats. The strengthening self, however, guided by the principle of Amor Fati, transforms that obstacle into a stepping stone, a learning opportunity, an exercise to develop character. Just as a fire turns everything thrown into dry branches, logs, even wet wood into fuel that makes it burn brighter, the wise person transforms the difficulties they encounter into fuel to increase their own virtue and strength. As Marcus Aurelius said, a rational and reasoning being can make material for itself out of every hindrance, using it to aim higher. Consider this, you lose your job. The weak self panics, feels like a victim, curses the world. The person approaching with Amor Fati, however, accepts the situation. This happened. What can I do now? Perhaps this is an opportunity for the career change I've long desired. Maybe it's an incentive to learn new skills. How can this difficulty teach me resilience and creativity? This is not playing Pollyanna. This is not denying the pain or hardship. It is focusing our energy not on railing against the unchangeable, past or uncontrollable external conditions, but on doing the best we can within the current situation. The practice of Amor Fati directly targets the weak self's habits of complaining, blaming, and adopting the victim role. Because when you embrace something, you cannot fight against it. When you accept a situation as it is, You don't waste energy trying to change it. Instead, you focus on how best to act within that situation. This dries up the infertile soil where the weak self takes root. In its place, acceptance, flexibility, and creative problem-solving begin to flourish. This love of fate does not make us passive. On the contrary, by directing our energy to the right place, it makes us more effective. By making peace with what we cannot control, we gain more power and clarity over the only thing we can control: our own responses and actions. It silences the noisy monologue of the weak self, filled with constant if-onlys and whys, replacing it with calm acceptance and the constructive focus of the question, now what? This is one of the most powerful blows dealt to the weak self, as it removes the fundamental resistance upon which it thrives. 4. The power of action, duty, now, and the death of laziness. One of the most loyal allies of our weak self is inaction. It does everything it can to keep us in our comfortable chairs, in the narcotic comfort of familiar routines. It avoids duties, postpones responsibilities, freezes in the face of challenges. I'll do it tomorrow. It's not the right time. I'm not ready enough. It whispers incessantly. Yet, for Stoicism, and especially for Marcus Aurelius, action is not just an outcome, but the very essence of a virtuous life. The way to kill the weak self is through breaking the chains of inaction. Marcus Aurelius began each day by asking himself this question: am I getting up today for the work I need to do as a human being, or to stay warm under the blankets? This simple question highlights a fundamental Stoic truth. We have a nature, a purpose. As rational and social beings, we are here to contribute to the world, fulfill our duties, and serve society. Laziness and inaction are contrary to our nature. The weak self leads us away from this natural inclination, condemning us to live below our potential. Just as it is unnatural for a bee to refrain from making honey or a plant from growing, it is equally unnatural for a human being to refrain from using their reason and contributing to the community, another fertile ground where inaction takes root is dwelling on the past or worrying excessively about the future. The weak self regrets past mistakes, mourns missed opportunities, or ruminates on possible future disaster scenarios. In either case, it distances us from the most important moment, the now. Marcus Aurelius reminds us repeatedly: live your life, moment by moment. The present moment is all you have. The past is gone, the future uncertain. The only time frame over which we have influence is the present. Action can only occur in the now. The weak self distracts us with the ghosts of the past or the mirages of the future, robbing us of the power and responsibility of the present moment. Therefore, one of the most effective weapons in the war against the weak self is to consciously focus our attention on the present moment and the task that needs to be done right now. It doesn't matter what the task is: a major project, a small household chore, a difficult conversation, or simply making your bed. What matters is doing the task to the best of your ability, with your full attention. Just as an artisan focuses all their attention on the work before them, we too must focus on our current action. This focus silences the distracting whispers of the weak self. As Marcus said, perform every action as if it were the last action of your life. This imbues our actions with seriousness, meaning, and urgency. The weak self often waits for the perfect moment or the perfect plan, but the Stoics know that action usually brings clarity and progress, not the other way around. Waiting until you are perfect to start often means never starting at all. Don't fall into this trap of the weak self. Identify the first step to take and take it. That first step will lead to the second. Action creates momentum. Small, consistent actions lead to significant transformations over time. getting out of bed every morning, completing a task you set for yourself each day, facing every challenge. These are blows struck against the fortress of the weak self. As you break the habits of inaction and procrastination that feed it, you build discipline and determination in their place. Remember, what kills weakness are not grand, one-off acts of heroism, but the small, determined steps taken every day. 5. The mirror of judgment, reframing reality. A large part of our weak self's power stems from the way we perceive and interpret events. Many of us believe that the things that upset, anger, or frighten us are external events, our boss's criticism, getting stuck in traffic, a friend's hurtful remark. However, the Stoics, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, remind us of a startling truth. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. What nourishes our weak self and gives it power is not the events themselves, but the labels we attach to them, the meanings we assign them. The weak self is like a distorted mirror. As it reflects events, it magnifies, distorts, and personalizes them. The boss's feedback is interpreted as, "He thinks I'm incompetent. I'm going to get fired." Traffic congestion means, "The universe is against me. Nothing ever goes right." A friend's thoughtless comment becomes the judgment. "She doesn't value me. I'm alone." These automatic, often negative, and frequently irrational judgments produce emotional poisons like fear, anger, and resentment, feeding our weak self and pushing us towards inaction or destructive reactions. We react to events we cannot control, with distorted judgments that we can control, but often don't. Marcus Aurelius constantly trained himself in this regard in his meditations. He made it a habit to question every impression, every thought that came to him. What is this thing in itself? Its structure? Its purpose? He frequently urged himself to see events in their naked state, that is, without the subjective interpretations, fears, and exaggerations we add to them. He says, "It is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. And you have the power to wipe out this judgment at any moment." This is like removing the foggy, distorted lens used by the weak self and replacing it with a clear, objective lens offered by Stoicism. A practical way to achieve this clarity is to apply the technique the Stoics called objective representation, fantasia cataleptic. This involves describing an event or situation in the most neutral, realistic, and emotionally unburdened way possible. For example, instead of the weak self's interpretation, "My boss hates me. He totally trashed my presentation in front of everyone." The objective representation might be, "During my presentation, my boss requested additional data on points A and B and stated that section C needed clearer phrasing." C. No judgment, no catastrophizing, no personalization. Just a description of what happened. This simple yet powerful exercise disperses the emotional fog surrounding the event and prevents the weak self from finding a foothold, reframing reality. In this way has the power to radically change our emotional responses and, consequently, our behaviors. A difficulty is no longer an insurmountable obstacle, but an opportunity to test and develop our character, connecting back to amor fati. Criticism becomes valuable feedback for growth, not a personal attack. A loss is accepted as an inevitable part of life, directing our energy towards adaptation rather than mourning. Instead of the weak self's whispers of fear and helplessness, the question posed by our reason, what would be the virtuous and constructive response in this situation, comes to the forefront. Killing the weak self largely means winning this perceptual battle. It involves noticing the automatic judgments that enter our minds every day, every moment, questioning them, and consciously replacing them with more rational, objective, and constructive ones. This is a kind of mental hygiene practice. by cutting off the weak self's favorite food negative, distorted judgments, we starve it. In its place, we create space for clarity, calmness, and purposeful action. Remember, we cannot control the external world, but we can control how we perceive it, and that changes almost everything. 6. The compass of virtue, in pursuit of the only true value. Our weak self tends to constantly tie its worth and happiness to external factors. How much money we earn, how much others appreciate us, how healthy or attractive we are, how many pleasant experiences we have. Like a ship whose compass spins wildly in the wind, it locks onto these transient goals that are outside our control. And when it fails to achieve or loses these goals, it feels disappointed, suffers, and deems itself worthless. Here lies the most radical and transformative idea offered by Stoicism, especially by Marcus Aurelius, against this illusion. The only true good thing in life is virtue arete, and the only true bad thing is vice. So, what do the Stoics mean by virtue? This is not a superficial, good person image approved by society. Virtue is the excellence of our soul, the expression of our highest potential, and it rests on 4 fundamental pillars. Wisdom, the ability to distinguish right from wrong, important from unimportant, justice, acting honestly and fairly towards others, courage, the strength to do what is right in the face of difficulty, pain, or danger, and temperance, keeping desires, pleasures, and impulses under control within the bounds of reason. These 4 virtues are interconnected and together form the essence of living in accordance with our rational and social nature. Instead of this inner quality, the weak self chases external, preferred indifference, like health, wealth, reputation, and flees from external, dispreferred indifference, like sickness, poverty, bad reputation. The Stoics call these things indifference because they are neither good nor bad in themselves. What is good or bad is how we use these things, how we react to them. Using wealth wisely and justly can be virtuous, but wealth itself is not virtue. Being healthy is preferred, but being courageous and steadfast in the face of illness is virtue. The weak self cannot make this distinction. Mistaking indifference for the ultimate goal, it enters a perpetual cycle of anxiety and dependence. For Marcus Aurelius, the purpose of life was simple: to live virtuously. Imperial power, wars, personal losses, none of these could change his fundamental focus. What he constantly reminded himself was, just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter, or elsewhere. Your only aim must be to do the action that reason and the law of the community demand. And do it right away, if you can. And if someone blocks you, accept the obstacle and turn to another virtuous action. For him, value lay not in the outcome of the action, but in the virtuous intention and effort within the action itself. Accepting virtue as the only true good is like dynamiting the foundations of the weak self, because it radically changes our source of motivation. We no longer act for external rewards, applause, money, pleasure, or to avoid external punishments, criticism, loss, pain. These are the fuel of the weak self. Instead, we act simply because it is the right thing to do, simply because it aligns with our rational and social nature. We strive to act wisely, justly, courageously, and temperately, because this is the only way to fulfill our potential as human beings. This inner compass overrides the fluctuating and deceptive signals of the weak self. It becomes a fixed north star, showing us which actions and beliefs we can stand behind without regret. To put this principle into practice, frequently ask yourself these questions. What is the wise thing to do in this situation? Is this action just? Does doing this require courage, and can I show that courage? Is this desire or reaction temperate? This internal questioning helps you bypass the automatic, impulsive, and often selfish reactions of the weak self. When you make virtue your compass, you steer clear of the shallow and stormy waters the weak self tries to drag you into, and set sail towards a deeper, more meaningful, and unshakable inner strength. 7. The training ground, forging the soul through practice. Wandering the abstract corridors of philosophy is important for understanding our weak self, but to truly kill it, we must descend onto the battlefield, that is, we must practice. Stoicism is not just a theory to be read, but a discipline to be lived. The weak self is nourished by ingrained habits and deep-seated fears. Uprooting it requires regular and conscious training. The Stoics offer us a set of powerful mental and behavioral exercises to strengthen the soul and diminish the influence of the weak self. These are the training grounds where we forge our character and sharpen our will. Perhaps the most famous of these exercises is premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This is not pessimism or catastrophizing. On the contrary, it is the practice of vividly imagining potential difficulties, losses, and setbacks: losing your job, contracting an illness, something happening to a loved one, failure. The weak self is vulnerable to unexpected blows. It panics, it shatters. Premeditatio malorum, however, acts like a kind of inoculation for our soul. It prepares us for the shock of potential hardships, increases our resilience, and most importantly, allows us to appreciate more deeply the value of what we currently possess: our health, our loved ones, our opportunities. As Seneca said, the blow is heavier for being unexpected. This exercise largely neutralizes the weak self's weapons of fear and anxiety, because the feared thing no longer seems entirely alien and insurmountable. The mind develops strategies for possible scenarios in advance, so it isn't caught unprepared. When the blow comes, another powerful practice is voluntary discomfort. The weak self loves comfort, is addicted to luxury, and avoids even the slightest discomfort. Voluntary discomfort involves consciously choosing minor hardships to break this addiction and increase our resilience. Perhaps eating simple food for a few days, taking cold showers, wearing your oldest clothes, refraining from an unnecessary purchase, or deliberately choosing the harder path. Seneca, by sleeping on a hard bed and eating the cheapest food for a few days each month, would ask himself, is this the condition that I feared? This practice exposes the lie whispered by the weak self. I can't stand this. It shows us that we are actually far more resilient than we think, and how little our happiness depends on external comforts. Just as a blacksmith strengthens steel by repeatedly tempering it in fire and water, voluntary discomfort makes our character more flexible and unbreakable in the face of challenges. It reduces the weak self's dependence on the comfort zone. Finally, there is the practice of self-reflection and journaling, which Marcus Aurelius's Meditations itself embodies. Set aside time at the end or beginning of each day to review your thoughts, actions, and reactions. In light of Stoic principles' dichotomy of control, virtue, amor fati, ask yourself, where did my weak self take control today? Which of my judgments were irrational or exaggerated? Where did I succumb to fear, anger, or laziness instead of acting virtuously? Where could I have responded better? This honest introspection prevents the weak self from hiding in the shadows. It makes it visible, allows us to recognize our behavioral patterns, and provides a roadmap for responding more consciously next time. It's like holding a mirror to our soul. It enables us to see the flaws and take action to correct them. These practices are not punishments, but tools for liberation. By intentionally discomforting the weak self, starving it, and aligning our actions with the compass of virtue, we nourish and cultivate the stronger, wiser, and more resilient version within us. This is the active, ongoing process of killing the weak self. 8. The citadel of reason, establishing mind as the ruling principle. In the chaotic world of our weak self, amidst the fog of fears, the storm of desires, the labyrinth of distorted judgments, if virtue is the compass that helps us find our way, then the captain who reads that compass and keeps the ship on the right course is reason logos. For the Stoics, reason is the fundamental characteristic that distinguishes humans from other living beings. It is the reflection within us of the rational order inherent in the universe itself. The weak self is inherently irrational. It acts on impulses, fleeting emotions, and baseless fears. The way to overcome it is to enthrone our reason, what Marcus Aurelius calls our ruling principle, hegemonikon, and make it the ultimate arbiter of our decisions and reactions. The power of the weak self emerges in moments when the voice of reason is suppressed. Outbursts of anger are moments when reason loses control. Panic attacks are moments when reason is taken captive by fear. Crises of jealousy are moments when reason is clouded by insecurity and false judgments. Laziness and procrastination are moments when reason is drugged by the desire for comfort and inaction. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly calls out to himself in meditations, "Take hold of your mind. Follow the path of reason. Do not allow your emotions to puppet you." For him, reason is the commander of the inner citadel. Emotions and desires are soldiers that must be kept under discipline. The weak self is the mutiny of these soldiers. Seizing command, adopting reason as the ruling principle, does not mean becoming emotionless. The Stoics aim not to eradicate emotions, but to understand them, question their source, and filter them through the sieve of reason. Healthy emotions like joy, love, caution are compatible with reason. Harmful, destructive emotions path. Excessive anger, fear, grief, desire arise from false judgments. The weak self clings tightly to these destructive emotions. Reason, however, diminishes their power by questioning these judgments. Is this fear based on a real danger, or just a possibility? Will this anger change the situation, or just make it worse? Will this desire truly increase my happiness, or does it only offer temporary pleasure? There are practical ways to actively use reason. The first is to pause before reacting. When you encounter an event, especially one that evokes a strong emotional response, stop for a moment instead of switching to autopilot. This brief pause gives your reason a chance to intervene and assess the situation. As Epictetus advised, when an impression assaults you, say to it, "You are just an impression, and not at all what you appear to be." Then examine it and test it by your rules. What is the fundamental rule for this test? The dichotomy of control and virtue. The second is to analyze the situation. As Marcus Aurelius did, break the event down into its components. Describe it objectively, as in Chapter 5. What happened? What aspects of this situation can I control, and what aspects can I not? What would virtuous behavior look like in this situation? This logical analysis pierces the emotional fog created by the weak self and allows us to see the situation more clearly. Just as we might disassemble a complex machine to understand it, we can break down a complex situation into its logical components. The third is to constantly remind yourself of Stoic principles. Train your reason to actively use these philosophical tools. When faced with a difficult situation, when the whispers of the weak self arise, consciously ask yourself, what would Marcus Aurelius do in this situation? What would Epictetus advise? How can this situation be embraced with amor fati? What is my duty right now? By remembering and applying these principles, reason builds a strong line of defense against the irrational reactions of the weak self. When we embrace reason as our ruling principle, the chaos of the weak self gives way to clarity, impulsivity yields to conscious action, and fear is replaced by calm acceptance. Reason is the key that frees us from the captivity of the weak self. It is the source of our inner freedom and strength. 9. Citizens of the Cosmic City, common good and relationships. Although the struggle against our weak self often seems like an internal war, its effects do not remain confined within the borders of our own souls. For the Stoics, especially those like Marcus Aurelius, who were both philosophers and statesmen, individual development was inseparable from social responsibility. We are not isolated islands. We are all citizens of a vast interconnected organism called the cosmos, a cosmic city. The weak self prevents us from seeing this big picture. It traps us in our own petty fears, desires, and resentments, making us selfish and narrow-minded. Killing the weak self is necessary not only for our own inner freedom, but also for becoming a better part of this great whole. The Stoic concept of oikeiosis expresses this deep connection. It is a natural sense of affinity and responsibility that begins with ourselves and expands outwards to our family, friends, community, and ultimately, all of humanity. Nature designed us as social beings. Just as hands, feet, or eyelids work in harmony with each other, it is natural for us humans to cooperate and help one another. The weak self, however, opposes this natural tendency. It separates us from others. Through emotions like jealousy, competitiveness, mistrust, and anger. It sees others' success as its own failure, looks after its own interests instead of cooperating, and immediately goes on the defensive or offensive when criticized or treated unfairly. As Marcus Aurelius said, men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them then, or bear with them. The weak self is willing neither to teach nor to bear. It only complains and withdraws. So, how do we overcome this social sabotage by the weak self? The first step is to re-evaluate our interactions with other people in light of Stoic principles. Especially when dealing with difficult people, our weak self immediately reacts with anger, resentment, or vengefulness. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with this reminder to himself: today I shall meet with the meddling, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. All this has afflicted them through their ignorance of true good and evil. This is a kind of mental preparation, a social version of premeditatio malorum. More importantly, it offers an understanding of the source of others' flawed behavior. Ignorance. They are captives of their own false judgments and uncontrolled emotions. Just as our weak self sometimes misleads us, this understanding helps us cultivate compassion and patience instead of the anger and resentment that feed the weak self. This does not mean condoning the wrong actions. It does not mean turning a blind eye to injustice or evil. However, it shifts our response from the blind rage born of feeling personally attacked to a perspective that sees the situation more objectively and aims for a virtuous, just, wise, courageous, temperate response. The dichotomy of control applies here too. We cannot control what others will do, but we can control how we respond to them. Instead of letting our weak self scream in anger, we can choose, guided by reason, to remain calm, try to understand the situation, and, if possible, seek a constructive solution. Killing the weak self makes us better friends, better partners, better parents, better neighbors, and better citizens. Because as we conquer our fears, we can offer support more courageously. As we control our desires, we can be more generous. As we correct our judgments, we can be more understanding. As we make virtue our compass, we can be more just and trustworthy. As we win the war within, we can establish more harmonious and constructive relationships with the outside world. Strengthening our own inner citadel also means strengthening the walls of the cosmic city. 10. Rebirth, the strength born from the ashes of weakness. Kill that weak version of yourself. As we approach the end of the journey, we began with this phrase. Let us clarify the true meaning of this metaphor once more. This is not a call for self-hatred or ruthless self-destruction. The weak self is like a parasite that drags us down, hindering our potential. Killing it means freeing ourselves from this parasite, achieving the health and strength towards which our soul naturally strives. This is as much a war for ourselves as it is against ourselves. It is a process of determined yet compassionate transformation, without falling into the trap of self-deprecation whispered by the weak self, or conversely, the self-indulgence filled. With excuses.it is vital to understand that this transformation will not happen overnight. Overcoming the weak self is not a war won with a single victory, but a lifelong training. Just as a gardener constantly clears their garden of weeds, nourishes the soil, and protects the seedlings, we too must continuously cleanse our minds and souls from the invasive tendencies of the weak self-fear, laziness, irrational judgments. Plant the seeds of virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, and nourish them with the light of our reason. Marcus Aurelius, until the end of his life, even at the pinnacle of an empire, continued to fight this internal battle every day. Meditations is living proof of this unending effort, this discipline of constant self-reflection and self-correction. Success is not about reaching perfection, but about trying again every day, getting back up every time you fall down in this process. Instead of being harsh towards ourselves, we should cultivate a stoic self-compassion. This does not mean accepting the weak self's excuses or ignoring our mistakes. It means accepting the inherent imperfection of being human, understanding the difficulty of our struggle, and guiding ourselves back with patience and understanding, but also determination, just as Marcus tried to do with others towards the right path, the path of reason and virtue. Ask yourself, where did I stumble today? Why? How can I act more wisely next time? This is not destructive self-criticism, but a constructive learning process. Instead of surrendering to the weak self, it is about trying to understand it and developing strategies to reduce its influence. As we stop feeding the weak self, as we consciously starve it, what is born in its place? Like a phoenix reborn from the ashes, a stronger, more resilient, wiser self emerges. This new self is not shaken by the tides of external events. It doesn't waste energy on things it cannot control, but focuses on the only thing it can, its own character and actions. It sees challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. Amor fati. It does not deny its emotions, but is not enslaved by them. It takes reason as its guide. It finds its worth not in external approval, but in inner virtue. It understands its connection with other people and strives to contribute to the common good. This is the state the Stoics called eudaimonia, not just fleeting pleasure or happiness, but a deep, lasting state of inner peace, meaning, and fulfillment. The natural result of living virtuously and according to reason, killing the weak self is, in fact, giving life to your true self. Instead of allowing your fears, doubts, and habits to define you, it is about bringing forth the rational, virtuous, and resilient being that is the highest expression of your potential. This is the most challenging, yet also the most rewarding task you can undertake in your lifetime. This, as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, is the true duty of being human. And so, we have reached the end of our journey to transform that weak, hesitant version within us. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and the unshakable principles of Stoic philosophy have illuminated our path. We have recognized our weak self. We have seen its fears, its excuses, its dependence on external validation. We have discovered powerful tools to overcome it, focusing on what we can control, embracing fate with love, amor fati, knowing the power of action and the value of the present moment. Reframing reality by questioning our judgments, making virtue the only true value, our compass, enthroning reason as our ruling principle, fortifying our soul through regular practice, and seeing ourselves as part of a larger whole. Remember, this act of killing is not an end, but a continuous beginning. Struggling with our weaknesses is about making a conscious choice every day. Just like Marcus did, it's about waking up each morning and remembering your duty, maintaining your attention and intention throughout the day, and evaluating yourself. With honest self-reflection in the evening, there will be stumbles on this path. The weak self will try to seize control from time to time. What matters is not giving up, getting back up every time, and continuing on your way guided by the light of Stoic principles. To break free from the chains of the weak self, to become the master of your fears, to manage your emotions, and to build an unshakable inner citadel against the challenges of life. This is true freedom. This is not merely surviving, but living fully, wisely, justly, courageously, and temperately, as was Marcus Aurelius's ideal. This is building a life filled with actions and beliefs you can stand behind without regret. Thank you for joining me here on the Stoic King with Glasses channel. I am happy if I could accompany you on this journey. If this video inspired you, and you want to incorporate more Stoic wisdom into your life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. In the next video, we will continue exploring our inner strength in the face of life's challenges. Until then, may your reason be your guide and your virtue your compass.